all to another one of the McPherson College First Friday lecture series that we hold here at the Cedars. I think this is a great program between our two facilities, and they're very interesting programs always. And I think with that, I'll just let Amanda introduce the program, and we'll get started.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm glad to be with you today. And before I introduce our speaker, I just wanted to share a little bit of campus news. Anna Ruxlow, many of you know, has been our alumni director for the last year, and she's also been our director of development. She's worn many hats at McPherson College, and you may already know that she will be the new director at the McPherson Museum. So she will be leaving us shortly at the end of June. I'm very excited, however, to share with you that we have an internal person who is coming to be our alumni director, and that is Carlene Tyler. Yeah. And we're just really excited about that. Of course, Carlene has had multi-decades of experience at McPherson College, and most of those have been in the registrar's office. And we're excited to have her come over to the advancement office in Beagley and take over a wonderful program that Anna has worked to build and to relate with all of you and to connect. So that announcement will be coming out publicly shortly, but I just wanted to share that with you today because we think that's some good news that that program continues to be in good hands. This afternoon, I am really pleased to introduce to you Ed Barr. Ed is a professor of technology in our auto restoration program, but I always believe that Ed should be one of Barbara Walters' most fascinating people because there's a lot to him that people don't know. For example, and I'm not going to read his whole biography, but I'll tell you, he originally graduated with a bachelor's degree in English. He later studied art history and fine arts. He completed an intensive summer German language program, later receiving his master's in art history at KU, before coming to McPherson College, where he finished his bachelor's in restoration technology. His work has been varied as well. He was the Andrew Mellon curatorial intern at the Spencer Museum of Art, as well as the assistant registrar. He's worked as an instructor in art history and museum studies at Washburn and has served as a museum director on more than one occasion. And we are so lucky to have him at McPherson College because he really exemplifies the love of learning that we want to instill and bring out in our students. And when I first started working with the restoration program, I had a senior come to me and he said, Ed Barr's classes are amazing. I'm sorry I'm graduating because if I could, and it was the year that Ed first came to the college to teach, and he said, if I could, I would stay another year and just take classes from Ed Barr. And so he sets a high standard for all of the faculty on our campus in terms of his commitment and dedication. And I'm pleased to introduce to you Ed Barr.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Let me know how the sound is. I'm kind of a foghorn naturally, and so I'm not used to wearing any kind of microphone, and I don't want to overwhelm you. On the other hand, I want you to be able to hear what I have to say. My title, I appreciate your faith in coming to something so completely far-reaching, and the reason for that is they asked me to commit to this months ago, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Because my background is in art, there were a lot of different things that I thought, wow, we could do this or this or this. And I really wanted to do something in connection with the automobile because that's the program that we have here that's so unbelievable. And so I just wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. So I thought, well, I'll just make the most impossibly broad title that I can think of. And surely what I come up with can fit in there somehow. So enough with the Aardvarks and Zanzibar. We're going to go and take a look at automotive design. I'm just going to spend a few minutes to give you kind of a really brief highlight of some interesting facts about automotive design. And then at the end of that presentation, you'll have an opportunity to design your own car. And so as we're going through this, I want you to think about what matters to you now, what things would you want to incorporate into a car, and darn it, by now, who cares if it's feasible? You've earned the right to put in there whatever you want. At all these points you're going, oh, well, I really want that new Mustang, but I really ought to get the minivan because we've got to be able to fit all 9 kids in there, you know. And so you're always through life making these choices, and now it's your chance to design whatever you want. Okay, so with that, just to get your creative juices flowing, I've got here photographic proof that cars were in fact invented in Kansas. This is a Kansas wind wagon. It's probably from the mid-1800s. And after being in Kansas this long, I can completely understand why somebody would come up with this. The only thing I can makes me a little nervous is trying to stop. It seems like this year we've had some of those 40-mile-per-hour winds, and you'd end up in northern Nebraska in the blink of an eye. In case you're not from this area, at McPherson College, we have an absolutely unique program that offers a bachelor's degree in automotive restoration technology. And I'm fortunate enough to get to teach in this program. We are teaching things there that no one is doing anywhere else, and it is essential, I think, basically our duty to carry on some of these techniques. I'll show you why that matters and in what way we do that. But some of the cars that we have are from all different time periods, from different countries. And some of the earliest cars, well, naturally, they built their designs based on the wagons. And so you've got a Studebaker wagon up there in the corner. Well, Studebaker was a well-known wagon and coach builder before they got into cars, and so it was natural that these companies would fall into this. This is a little giant, bit of an ironic name there, because if you have to push this guy, I guaranteed you're going to get a hernia, because this thing weighs about as much as an office building. It's sitting in our shop right now, but clearly it's basically a wagon with an engine. It has big wooden wagon wheels with hard rubber tires. I can't imagine riding in that thing over a street. Or another car that's in our shop, it's called a Holzman High Wheeler. They made buggies. They made these cars called high wheelers because, of course, in the United States, the Wild West, basically, the roads were way behind, Europe. We didn't have those industrious Romans building all of these grand paved roads, and so you were lucky if you had a path through the mud. And so there were cars developed specifically for this. It was really tall. Who cares? You've got some ruts. It's light enough that you can grab the 2 nearest farmers out of this field and lift that guy out of the rut and get you on your road. So that's just an idea of the kinds of designs that were coming across early. Well, some of the coach builders who were literally building coaches, as I mentioned, naturally started building bodies for motor cars. And they were catering to especially the upper class. This is Brewster is the company. They were world famous as coach builders and carriage builders, and they were headquartered in New York. And here a draftsman is discussing a potential design with a customer. These were your aristocrats. If you went to Brewster, you could say, I want this specific design of car. We're going to in this town car, the chauffeur's area is open. That's to remind him of his station in life as he's getting rained on, and you're in the covered passenger compartment. You could pick a custom color. Brewster would custom grind colors for you so that your car would be very distinctive and not to be confused with the Vanderbilts or the DuPonts. You might have more than one body built for the same chassis, the running gear. And depending on the season, you could bring in one body to have it switched out for the other one. And while the other one was there, they might re-varnish it with a new coat of paint, do any kind of repairs that might needed to be made to it. So that gives you an idea of what these custom coach builders could do. And here's an example of a design drawing from about 1916 where you could lay out the different specifications. Maybe you're particularly tall. You could decide, yes, I want the door to come up such and such a height. Naturally, a lot of the early customers for these coach builders, you may recognize this dashing man. This was me a few years ago. No, I'm only kidding. It's Gary Cooper with a custom Duesenberg. It's called a Tourster is the style of car. That's what it looks like now. So those are the original colors. A lot of us get sort of numbed by these black and white images because you don't get a sense of just how flamboyant these kinds of cars could be. This was the most powerful car on the road of its time, so they're selling performance too, but it was also pretty just extravagant in every way in terms of the color. Some other stars you may recognize, that's Clark Gable. I think he looks better with his mustache, but he's got a custom Packard at the top, or Jean Harlow. She had a Cord, this is called a Cord L29, all custom made. It looked very much like this, but it has disappeared. It could be in a Kansas barn, for all we know. Those things happen. But it did look almost exactly like the one on the right. And this is just to give you an idea of the kinds of clientele that were really setting the tone for the design of cars. The big automakers were really kind of following what the major coach builders would do. On the inside of your cockpit, you might have some serpent hide, lizard or something. That's what this is. And then you can just tell so much attention to detail has been paid to everything. Every instrument it looks like a jewel. So it is this very, very high level of craftsmanship. Well, if you, and most of this was handmade with these cars. So here is a workman at one of the big body companies in the 20s using this enormous tool called a power hammer, and he's shaping a cowl for a car. That's the big piece of metal ahead of the dashboard. So this is all handwork, and that was part of the sales pitch, is this is fine craftsmanship. Well, lo and behold, right down the road at McPherson College, you can do the same thing. This is a power hammer that I built last spring. There's about an hour of labor for each pound in this, but it's so worth it. There are so many times in your life when something doesn't live up to your expectations. You have this picture in your mind's eye of, I want to get this result. Well, the power hammer is one of those few things that can give you that and more, sometimes way more, but through using it, you learn to control its awesome power so that it is a fantastic piece of equipment. And the way it works is there is a top die that is slung, and you're controlling how fast and how hard it is slung with a foot pedal, kind of like an accelerator or a pedal on a sewing machine. And then that allows you to stretch the metal as needed, like a big piece of lasagna, until you get the sort of shapes that you want. But the thing that's so fascinating is that you can do this here, just down the road. So that's what we're teaching, in case you didn't know much about us. Early designers, the big three, the first of the big automakers to really understand the significance of design, that these are going to make things sell, was GM. And they hired this guy named Harley Earl, whose father was a coach builder himself and raised Harley from an early age to understand how cars were built. And at GM, they started a whole design department called Art and Color. And some of the things they would do is they would hire a lot of the best designers, and they would have them come in and do sketches. We want you to do grills. And so maybe for a week, all you did was sketch grills. And then at the end of the week, they'd take the best designs and, okay, thank you, and send you on your way, and then keep those to use in the future. So that's what some of these sketches are about. They would also do clay models. In the 20s and into the 30s, designers were all doing clay models, and they would have these little competitions where different groups would each work on a car, and then they would have miniature exhibitions, and the brass at GM would go through and decide, how do we want to, which design do we want to pick. There's a Cord. This is a Cord 810 from 1936. It's in the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Museum, and that's what the finished car looks like, but this is a clay model. Well, you can do the same thing just down the road. And we're using the exact same clay that Harley Earl used. He helped with this company called Chavant, styling clay. He helped to develop this particular kind of clay to use in automotive design. And I'd hoped when they first asked me to do this presentation and activity that we would get to do something in clay, because that really is essential to the design process, but it is hard as a brick when it's at room temperature, which is the reason for that is that you can shave out details in the surface, and so it's really not very practical for us to use. You have to heat it up. Once it's hot with a heat gun, then it's completely pliable like Play-Doh, and so it's a little bit awkward to work with. So we're going to draw instead. But I guess the fun thing is that my students are getting to do this using the very same clay. It has a certain smell and a certain texture, and it's exactly like it would have been from 1929 up to the present. They're still using it, although now a lot of the actual cutting of the clay is done with a computerized mill. It cuts it out, and where's the fun in that? And in my students, one of the fun things about the automotive design class that I taught is that the text that we used was filled with all of these stories of how in 3 days they designed the new Studebaker Avanti or whatever, and in a full-size clay. And so here, how college students tend to be, there's always some, my pencil lead broke, or, there's some reason why they couldn't get it done. Well, these guys back in the day were doing full-size, entire clay models of cars in a matter of days. I don't want to hear any whining when you got all semester to work on that. It worked great. I didn't anticipate that we would be able to eliminate whining with these great stories, but it did, and it gave them an idea of what it's really like to work. And design is just like any other kind of work. The job's got to get done. You got to get to work. So those are some examples of student clays. These bottom three, that's an Auburn, this is a 48 Buick, and that is a Porsche 911. Gives you an idea of what kinds of things they did. Well, in the 40s, of course, with the war going on, there was not a lot of effort put into designing cars for the time. They were trying to think ahead. What are we going to be doing with our automotive designs? And naturally, they were looking to airplanes. And so many of them, Chrysler went from building cars to building tanks. Well, it's natural that the designers sitting around would be looking at the things around them, and that would then filter down into automotive design. So if you have a glorious P-51 Mustang up in the top right corner and see the exhaust stacks coming out the side there, well, lo and behold, here they show up. This is a 48 Buick. I mean, that's got to be where that came from. I don't know that they necessarily saw that particular thing, but it's just such a connection. Or this 53 Ford, this is over in our shop right now. This is a propeller. You don't need a propeller on a car unless it's an amphicar. And there's a little airplane on the hood on the side of the car, same 53 Ford. It has this swooshing jet. It makes no sense on the side of a car, but it looks great, doesn't it? It makes you want to. My wife saw this and she's like, "What is that car? I want to have that." And then I asked Garrick about it, and he's like, "Oh no, we're going to try to trade it to somebody for a Harley, which is, for purposes of education, more important because this car is already done. We need the Harley more, but to get my wife so instantaneously excited about the car, they were doing something right. She loves cars, but to see somebody just fall in love instantly." Another thing of the 50s that came out, of course, the fins and the chrome. Those are in the great colors. That's probably coral or salmon on that 57 Chrysler. We have one of those in the shop too. Then in the 60s, ironically, you have a couple of different things going on. You have the dawn of the compact car. The 58 Nash Rambler took Nash to third place in sales. Before that, they'd always been, way down at the bottom. Well, all of a sudden, hey, these small cars sell, just like now. Or the 60 Plymouth Valiant. So you start to see compact cars. Maybe your car will be a compact car. Just an option. And then, of course, muscle cars. You have the Mustang, 64.5, and then you have a humorous advertisement from the 62 Ford Galaxy, and the joke is, guess which Galaxy is hiding the new 406 two-barrel carb engine, and it leaves 50 yards of black rubber on the asphalt. I know which one I would pick, but that's and then of course, by the way, if you're a housewife and you're buying groceries, it's docile enough for you too. So we don't want to leave anybody out in the sales literature, but those are some of the concerns of the 60s, dominated by compacts and muscle. 70s, for some of us, dark times for the automobile. Rising insurance rates kill the muscle car, unfortunately. You have increasing government restrictions on emissions, which tend to make cars, instead of shrinking the engines, they just made them less efficient and choked them down. And so, and then increased safety led to giant bumpers and crash zones and things like that. Cars got bigger, heavier, more sluggish. And that's kind of what these large behemoths represent. And then some other high points, other compacts, certainly incredibly important, like the instantaneously exploding Ford Pinto, or of course the van. So, having said that, think about what matters to you. For me, that would be certainly kids and dogs. I have a lot of each of them. I'm not sure how I got so many, but they're there. That's my son Harrison, and one of our Mastiffs. We have 2 Mastiffs and a Great Pyrenees now. This is Gus when he was a puppy still at that point. Now he weighs at least as much as I do and salivates every bit as much. There we go. Okay, so the car that I designed, it's called the Dual Cowl Mastiff Mobile. The cowl is the area on a car beneath the windshield. That was the part that guy was shaping on the power hammer. And on some luxurious cars back in the 30s, for example, you might have 2 cowls. So the car that I came up with would be similar to a luxury Packard of, say, the late 30s, but I've included some enhancements for the comfort of an aging Mastiff who doesn't do so well, getting in and out of cars at all. It makes him very unhappy. The other dogs don't have any trouble with it. But it occurred to me, if we turned this second door into a ramp that folded straight down, he would be able to very easily go in and out, no problem. The interior, of course, would need to be upholstered with something that is saliva-proof and incapable of being ripped, because he has these, his paws are about as big as my hand, and the nails are all, just like an inch long. So I thought, Gore-Tex ripstop would be perfect. Then we could upholster all along, and this is the tonneau area on a car up here, this nice soft upholstery all the way around, so that wherever he decides to rest his head, he'll have a comfortable place. And then I would increase the size of the windscreen to protect him, from bugs and such as we go down the road. And we need plenty of power because he does weigh, in excess of 200 pounds. And, so we'd want to be able to move quietly down the road. So now, the task for you is to design the car of your choice. What would you like to have? Maybe you'd rather have someone drive you, or it could be performance, economy, flamboyance, whatever you choose. On each table, I've included some regular conventional pencils. I've included some erasable colored pencils. These work quite well. I was impressed. And I have certainly more paper. I've got graph paper because it makes it a little bit easier to draw a circle and line things up. You could probably use those styrofoam cups for a template for your wheel if you choose. I have a pencil sharpener in the back. Everything should be sharp, but if you need something sharpened, let me know, and then I could dash back there and sharpen it. Let me know if you need anything.
Wrapping this up. Ed, we're done. Okay, no final comments. I've been pretty impressed with some of the stylings I've seen around the table. I was sharing with a couple of the tables that last week a number of the auto restoration faculty and I and a couple of students who comprise our strategic planning team were out in California, and we were in a shop that they do restoration, but they also do custom coach building for cars. And they had a car that they had they built from the chassis, the drivetrain, everything from scratch. And it was, they called it the Gato, and it was $1 million car. And we got to see where they designed the car and how they work with the customer. And so you see, some of you who are really good at this, there's your second career maybe. Ed, I did want to thank you for coming today. And in July, since the first Friday is the 4th, we will be meeting on the 11th instead, and Dr. Carrie Dobbins from our history department will be presenting. So you'll want to make sure and mark your calendars, and we'll probably send out a reminder as well. Thank you all.